Hey everyone, Pastor George here with today's Bible study recap. And so today we are beginning our wind down of First Peter as we begin the final chapter of Peter, chapter 5. And we only did 5 verses in chapter 5, so 1 through 5, which has to do addressing a particular group of people in the church, which are elders. Now, elders, as we understand them as Presbyterians, play a vital role in our congregations, right? And these aren't necessarily the oldest members of the congregation, but it does have this idea of being wise, right? And that is where our name comes from, right? After all, Presbyterian comes from the Greek word presbyteros, which no one in my class knew this morning. So start to cement this information in your mind because this is going to be something that I probably quiz people on for my whole career. So if you're a Presbyterian, know where that name comes from. It's presbyteros, which means elder, right? Because we are a church that is ruled by elders to the highest levels, right? The fact is I'm going to General Assembly in the summer, right? And it's me and another teaching elder, which is like a person in a pastoral position, and then 2 ruling elders, so people from sessions whose full job is not to care for the church, right? And they have equal say and equal power as we do. So there's this idea that the elders rule over the church, right? So that's why it's a big part of it, and that's why it's called Presbyterianism, because it has more to do with setting itself apart from other reform groups with the way it's structured rather than theology, because the theology is very similar. So big deal. And so Peter talks about what's supposed to guide these elders, and it's humility, not worldly gain, right? Not being domineering, setting an example, stuff like that, right? That's what it's supposed to be. And they're all fulfilling pastoral responsibilities, right? One of the things that is, I think that might be a touchy subject for some pastors, but even something a lot of Christians don't realize is the position of pastor is not a biblical position, right? It's not like there's this one person who's there, right? And that's what the Bible talks about, right? Basically, over time, the church has designated one person, an elder in the church, to be the leader of the congregation when it leads worship and to perform the sacraments, right? Now, in if push comes to shove, like any elder can do the sacraments, right? They usually need to get a special dispensation because they want to make the Presbyterian hierarchy wants to make sure that the person who's doing it knows what they're doing, understands the theology, all these other sorts of things. But anyone could actually get the ability to do it, right? Any elder, I should say, has the ability to perform the sacraments. Anyone can baptize, actually. But that's besides the point. So the role of a pastor wasn't actually in the Bible. So you have all of the elders taking on the responsibilities that a pastor would normally have, and that's why you see, they're not only teachers but also overseers, seeing over things, right, making decisions, stuff like that, and that is really important because it it shows kind of what the role of leaders in the church is supposed to be. And you don't do this for worldly reasons, right? But you do it because you're serving the church and you're serving God in heaven, right? And for that, you're rewarded with glory, not with any sort of physical, betterment than anyone else or anything like that. So that kind of runs in contrast to the way that leadership is usually portrayed in the world, right? Though some of the qualities that we look for in elders are definitely sought out by other people, but in lots of cases, kind of the way that the church expects people to lead is not the way that the world expects them to lead. And so we talked a little bit about that. And finally, we ended where Peter ends, which is an exhortation for the young, just the young, to obey the elders, right? And that is specifically, again, talking about this thing in church leadership, although you can certainly take it out and apply it because it actually does kind of apply to kind of maybe older, younger, power dynamic things, stuff like that. But the reason is that young believers tend to be very headstrong and very zealous, and that's good. You want people like that, right? You want people that are on fire because sometimes if you've heard the same thing over and over again, it's hard to get all fired up again. But people who are on fire also tend to think that they know better than everyone else. And so Peter exhorts them to not think that way. And then everyone, elders included, are supposed to carry themselves humbly. And he quotes Proverbs. And then he will lead us. That will lead us into where we end next week, where we're going to finish with the last 6 verses of Peter. First Peter, and then we're gonna go into Second Peter. But yeah, that's and this all has a purpose, right? The purpose is the reason that elders, leaders are important is because, as we'll find out next week, there's persecution, right? And leadership is important, and being humble in the face of difficult decisions is important as well. So I look forward to diving into that with all of you next week. I hope all of you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Peace out.